The fog lay heavy over the forest, turning every tree into a ghostly silhouette. The air was damp, the kind that clung to clothes and whispered of rain. Mason tightened the strap of his pack and raised a hand to halt the team. "Listen," he said. At first, there was only the quiet drip of water from the pines. Then, faint and trembling, a cry. It was high-pitched, raw, and desperate. Not the call of a bird. Not a fox. It came again, closer this time. They followed the sound through a patch of ferns until the trees opened into a small clearing. There, in the center, sat a tiny black bear cub. Its fur was matted with dew, its sides heaving with each frightened breath. The fog curled around it like a living thing, isolating it in a pale circle of light. Mason's heart clenched. "Where's your mother?" he murmured, taking a cautious step forward. The cub flinched, then let out another cry, softer now, as though its voice was running out. No answering sound came from the trees. They scanned the tree-line for movement. Nothing. Just the restless sway of branches in the fog. Kara, the youngest on the team, whispered, "It's alone. It has to be." But Mason knew better than to rush. A mother bear could be near, watching, waiting for them to make a mistake. Yet the cub's shiver cut through his caution. If it was truly abandoned, every second mattered. The cry came again, weaker this time. Mason knelt, his voice barely above a breath. "Easy, little one, we're here." Somewhere in the fog, the forest held its silence, as if listening. The cub's tiny body trembled so hard Mason could see the shivers ripple through its fur. Its paws were muddy, its nose wet, and its eyes wide and glossy, shifted between them and the wall of fog beyond. Kara took a cautious step forward, cradling the small blanket they always carried for injured wildlife. "We can't just leave it like this," she said, her voice hushed but urgent. Mason held up a hand. "Not yet." His mind ticked through the possibilities. If the cub's mother had been hunting or scouting for food, she might return at any moment. And if she came back to find humans hovering over her cub, the outcome could turn dangerous, fast. From somewhere deep in the fog, a branch snapped. All 4 team members froze. Mason scanned the tree-line, every nerve alert, but the sound didn't repeat. "Could be wind," murmured Alex, though his tone said he didn't quite believe it. Mason exhaled slowly. "Here's the problem. If the mother is gone, this cub won't last another night in the cold. But if she's here, we're standing between her and her baby. That's the fastest way to get mauled." Kara glanced at the cub again. Its head drooped, eyelids heavy, as if it hadn't eaten in days. "We've seen no tracks, no calls, no sign she's even alive." A silence fell between them. The cub let out a low whimper, then toppled slightly to one side before righting itself. That was the moment Mason's caution cracked. He gave a short nod. "All right. We keep it warm tonight, right here. No moving it unless we're sure. 2 people on watch, all night." The team began setting up a small shelter at the clearing's edge, the fog thickening as the day bled into night. Somewhere, out in that shifting white veil, the forest was watching. By nightfall, the clearing had vanished behind a curtain of fog so dense, their lantern light barely reached a few feet. The forest felt smaller, as if the mist had folded the trees inward. Kara knelt beside the cub, wrapping it in the blanket and tucking it against a small heat pack. Its breathing slowed, no longer ragged, but the rise and fall of its tiny chest kept pulling Mason's eyes back. The team had set their small camp just far enough from the cub to give space if the mother returned, close enough to respond if danger came from anywhere else. The fire hissed softly, damp logs smoldering rather than crackling. Alex sat on first watch, his breath clouding in the cold air. Every now and then, a faint rustle would drift through the fog, and each time his hand tightened on the flashlight. "Think she's out there?" Kara asked in a whisper, breaking the long silence. Alex didn't turn. "I think, if she is, she's watching us right now." Somewhere beyond the firelight, an owl called once, sharp and low. Then, silence. Hours crawled by. The fog shifted in slow swirls, the trees appearing and vanishing like ghosts. The cub stirred once, letting out a soft, pitiful cry. Mason's head jerked toward the sound, heart thudding, but no answering call came from the forest. By the time Kara relieved Alex, the cold had sunk deep into everyone's bones. She took her post near the cub, every muscle tight, ears straining for the snap of a twig or the heavy pad of paws. The forest gave them nothing, No warning, no approach, just the unnerving sense that they were not alone. When dawn began to smudge the fog with a faint silver light, Mason realized he had barely blinked all night. The cub was still with them. But so, perhaps, was something else. The first hint was not a sound, but a feeling. The air shifted, heavier, charged, as though the fog itself was holding its breath. Mason was kneeling by the cub, checking the blanket, when a faint vibration trembled through the damp ground. He froze. Another thud followed, and another, slow, deliberate, impossibly heavy. "Kara," he murmured, not daring to raise his voice. Her eyes flicked toward him, then past him into the wall of white. The fog swirled, parting just enough to reveal the suggestion of movement, something vast, gliding silently between the pines. Alex's hand closed around the flare gun. "Could be a moose," he whispered. But the look on his face said he didn't believe it. The footsteps drew closer, each one a dull thump that seemed to land right inside their ribcages. A dark outline began to solidify, shoulders like boulders, a head low and forward, the slow, unstoppable gait of something built for power. The cub whimpered. The shadows stopped. No one breathed. Even the forest seemed to retreat into silence. Then from the shifting veil she emerged, massive, black as wet earth, a scar tracing her flank like a pale streak of lightning. Her fur shimmered faintly with frost. Her eyes caught the glow of the fire and burned like amber coins. The bear's gaze went from the cub to the humans in a slow, measured sweep. Mason felt the weight of it, an ancient intelligence, neither panicked nor reckless, simply assessing. Kara's fingers tightened on the blanket wrapped around the cub. "If she charges." "She won't," Mason said, though his pulse was hammering. The bear took one step forward, fog curling around her legs. And in that moment, Mason understood, they had not found the cub. The cub had been waiting for her. What happened next would decide whether they walked out of this forest, or became just another quiet story in its shadows. The world narrowed to the space between the mother bear and the cub. The fire crackled weakly, sending up thin trails of smoke that tangled with the fog. Mason felt every instinct in his body screaming to step back, but something in the bear's stance, low head, ears relaxed, told him this wasn't a charge. The cub gave a sharp, desperate cry. It wriggled from Kara's hold, tiny claws snagging the blanket, and stumbled forward on awkward legs. Mason's heart lurched. No. But the cub didn't hesitate. It tottered through the damp grass and bumped its small head against the towering shadow before it. The change was instant. The massive bear's muscles loosened, her breath slowed, and a deep, almost inaudible rumble vibrated in her chest. She lowered her great head, nuzzling the cub with astonishing gentleness, licking away the clumps of mud from its fur. Kara's lips parted in disbelief. She came for it. Alex let the flare gun fall to his side. His voice was hushed, reverent. "And we almost took it away." The bear lingered over her cub, sniffing every inch, as though memorizing its scent again. Then she turned her gaze back to the humans, not hostile, but unblinking, measuring. Mason took a slow step back, hands raised in a silent signal of surrender. "Go on," he whispered, though he wasn't sure who he was talking to, the cub, the mother, or himself. The bear gave one last look, a glance heavy with something Mason couldn't name, and then without a sound, she turned, guiding her cub into the swirling mist. The forest swallowed them in seconds, leaving only the fading imprint of their footsteps and the quiet crackle of the fire. Kara broke the silence first. "I don't think we rescued it," she said softly. "I think we were just keeping it safe until she could." And Mason, staring into the fog where they'd vanished, knew she was right. The forest felt different after the bears disappeared, less like a place of threat, more like a living thing that had just taken a deep breath. The fog curled lazily around the pines, and every sound seemed sharper, the drip of water from a branch, the faint rustle of a jay shifting on its perch. No one spoke at first. They just stood there, listening. Finally, Kara broke the silence. "Do you think she knew that we were helping?" Mason thought about the look the mother bear had given him, steady, unflinching, almost human. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I think, maybe she understood enough." Alex kicked at the wet ground, his voice low. "We spend so much time thinking we're the ones in control out here. But maybe we're just guests." The hike back to camp was slower. They passed through pockets of sunlight where the fog thinned, revealing the lush undergrowth, the pale green moss glowing on fallen logs. Mason felt a strange pull to look over his shoulder more than once, half expecting to see a dark shape following, watching. When they finally reached the clearing, the fire pit was cold, their gear damp from the morning mist. But Mason didn't feel the same urgency as before. The fear that had gripped them last night had been replaced by something quieter, deeper. They packed their things in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was a silence filled with understanding. As they strapped the last pack, Kara glanced at the tree line. "You know," she said softly, "maybe she wasn't just protecting her cub. Maybe she was showing us something." Mason followed her gaze into the shifting fog. He didn't see the bear again, but he felt her presence, like the forest itself had leaned in to whisper a truth. Some bonds, he realized, didn't need words to be understood. They shouldered their packs and stepped into the mist, carrying that unspoken lesson with them, deeper than any trail they'd ever walked.